Hey there, guys. This is Chris Ursua, sales coach, business consultant, and entrepreneur. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to launch a very profitable business the startup way. So if you're here, we do have another video of how to launch a business the bootstrapped way. Okay. If you know the difference between that and you know that you want to bootstrap and not raise capital, go and look for my other video. But if you want to know everything about startups, this is going to be an amazing video for you because if you really stick with us till the end, you're going to learn how to not be this guy. And this is a beautiful meme. You have the Star Wars character just saying, "Hey, I'm adding a new feature to my product." And then the lady saying, "Hey, and marketing it too, right?" And then absolute silence, because unfortunately that's what happens to a lot of beginner startup people, that they love creating products but they're not really good at marketing and sales. Not to everybody, of course. Then this another beautiful meme with Leonardo DiCaprio, which you have an overexcited startup founder saying, "This is the next big thing," and the other guy looking back and saying, "Hey, have you gotten any paying customers yet?" And he, of course, hasn't, because that's what happens to a lot of startup founders out there, right? So, welcome to this video, how to launch a business the startup way, turning an idea into an investable company. We're going to be here for 10 minutes. I'm going to show you everything you need to really understand this way of, or this method of creating a business. Now, first thing you need to understand is that there's two ways to start a business: the bootstrap way and the startup style. When we're saying bootstrap, we mean you are selling and reinvesting the profits from what you sell to grow the business. You're looking to stay lean, right? Few employees, minimum cost, and a growth that can be fast, but usually not as fast as if you have raised capital and have a lot of money just to spend, right? When we're talking about building a startup, usually you start building a little bit slower, okay? You're raising money, you're trying to scale massively, right? So you're using money from investors to just materialize this massive vision. And I just want to make it clear, both of these models work, but they are not the same and they should not be approached the same. So what is a startup exactly? Going deeper into this, a startup is not a small business. A startup is decide to scale fast, build around technology or innovation, funded by outside capital, and it is extremely high risk for the startup founders and the investors, but also high reward. And a bootstrap business, on the other hand, is designed to be profitable from the start, built around simple, proven business models, funded by sales, savings, or reinvesting cash flow. And it's usually lower risk. I wouldn't say without a risk, but lower than a startup. It's steady, it's a sustainable reward. Usually owners have more freedom because they don't have investors that they need to report to. So I hope this makes it really clear. If it doesn't, I have a couple of famous startup examples because I just want to prove that you can be successful both ways. So when it comes to startups, you've heard of these companies: Uber, Airbnb, Stripe, SpaceX, Snapchat, Robinhood, Coinbase. There's so many startups that raised capital and then just started massive growth. But remember, out of every 20 startups, usually one will make it and 19 will fail or never reach a big potential. And then when it comes to bootstrapped examples of famous companies, a lot of people think that there's no huge bootstrapped companies. Of course there are, okay? One of them is MailChimp, right? Atlassian, GitHub, Shutterstock, Basecamp, Craigslist, GoPro. Most of these companies bootstrapped all their way to success. Maybe later they got some capital, but most of them bootstrapped all the way. Even Basecamp is publicly anti-venture capital, and they have a great book called Rework, The Founders, I believe. Very good book if you want to understand bootstrapping a business. Now, which model is better? And really, the answer is horrible, and it depends. But I'm going to give you some pros and cons. So with the startup model, what are the pros? Number one, you have access to large amounts of capital to grow fast. You have the ability to hire top talent. You can attack big markets with aggressive strategy, more room for innovation, potential for massive exits because you're in an ecosystem that has that tendency to go there. You can grow faster than competitors, okay? Even not being profitable, which for a bootstrapped entrepreneur, that's crazy, right? The cons is that you give up equity and control. There are stories of startup founders that are kicked out of their companies. You have a lot of pressure from investors, so not only the company pressures you, but then you have investors on top of you. You have a high burn rate, high risk of running out of money. A lot of the startups die, most of them because they run out of money and they're not profitable fast enough. Success depends on raising multiple rounds. You spend more time pitching than building, and the failure rate is extremely high. I don't have stats for this, but I would say even higher than bootstrapped businesses. But when they make it big. Now, bootstrap model, pros and cons. The pros is that you keep 100% of ownership and control. A lot of people love that. Profitability comes earlier. You can have this healthier, safer growth. Decisions are based on customers, not investors. Less pressure leads usually to more clarity and freedom to actually focus on business building. Lean operations build stronger discipline and smarter process because you're burning your own money. So you take it more seriously. In a lot of cases, there's a lot of responsible startup entrepreneurs that take their jobs really seriously. But when it's your own money and it's your own everything, you have a little bit more skin in the game. And usually these businesses will be a little bit more resilient in downturns, right? They also create a wartime CEO, somebody that knows how to bootstrap the business, has very different skills than somebody that's a startup owner, right? Now, what are the cons? Growth is lower without outside capital. You must be profitable early, limiting big bets. It's harder to enter massive markets that are dominated by venture capital backed competitors, limited resources. You wear many hats, and scaling requires time, systems, and personal discipline. So, which one's better? You need to decide what is better for you. I've been a bootstrapped entrepreneur that built several companies to several multiple $1 million of revenue per year. And bootstrapping is all I know. I've never raised capital. I think my next venture will be BC backed. That's a goal that I have to leave that next decade with that route. But being bootstrapped really gave me some amazing skills that when I talk to my BC backed startup friends, they don't usually have them, like customer service, face to face, a lot of things that you learn while wearing multiple hats. Now, this is a great meme. Founders with venture capital money looking at bootstrappers. That's usually how they will look at us, right? Because you see these big news or media bursts saying like, "Hey, X company raised $10 million," and then the bootstrap guys are like, "I have a credit card and a dream, and let's make it work," right? But then there's also this meme when it's time to get shit done in a recession, and the bootstrap founders will usually be in front of everyone because we developed a lot of skills that can make us survive. So we're a little bit like cockroaches. Is that how you pronounce it? Sometimes you have the no-code founder, the BC-backed founder just hiding in a clown suit. And a last meme for you, you have the BC-backed founder. He looks really cool in his picture, cool car, Mr. Bean having a great day. And then the bootstrapper, we're just putting pieces of everything together to make it work. So you kind of get the idea of the different profile or different businesses and how they start, right? Now that we know exactly what is a startup, the second question is who funds a startup, right? And there's usually six basic funding sources, and I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. If you guys want a more in-depth thing of on any of the subjects that I'm touching, just let me know in the comments, okay? Source number one tends to be friends and family, people who trust you, not the business, fast, simple, emotional money. Depending on your network and your friends and family, I've heard of friends and family rounds of $10 million, and I've heard of friends and family rounds of $10,000. Second source tends to be angel investors. These are high net worth individuals, usually writing small checks between 10 to 250K, but they can be way bigger. It just depends on your network. And they bet on founders really, really early. One of the cool things when you're looking at an angel investor is always asking yourself, what do they bring to the table apart from money? Do they have a network? Do they have the methodology? Could they be our clients or open up doors for us? It's very important to know that. Third source of funding tend to be venture capital, right? These are professional investors who manage large funds, right? So they have funds with different money sources of different investors, and they invest for high growth plus scalability. They expect big returns. These are guys that will get a part, usually equity inside your company participation, and they'll expect a 20x return on that, right? But it's also engraved into their business model that they'll invest in 20 companies and they'll expect one to really be the one that brings the whole money back. The fourth source usually are accelerators. These are programs like Y Combinator, Techstars, and more. These are for very early stage founders. They'll give you some money. So as to the moment of this recording, Y Combinator usually, I think they ask like for 7-8% of participation in your business, they'll give you 500K. But really, nobody goes to Y Combinator for the money. They go there for the contacts. They go for the reputation. They go because, as of the moment of this recording, they're the one of the few accelerators that has a lot of billion-dollar companies that have come out of it. So that's why you go to these accelerators for the contacts, the training, and of course a little bit of money and the support. Then source number five, corporate investors. Big companies usually will invest in small startups to innovate faster. So most of the massive multi-billion dollar companies out there will create funds to develop other companies. Sixth source could be crowdfunding. This was very popular in the early 2000s, 2010. But there's platforms where the public invests in small amounts. So you can actually get, I don't know, 100 people to pitch in. They get some benefits because they were early investors, and you get the capital you need to develop that product. It's Kickstarter style kind of thing, right? So those are the six sources, and here are some simple rules to understand. Number one, small money believes in you, big money believes in your traction. So small money, friends and family, etc., will usually look at the owner and believe in the owner. But when you're talking about bigger checks, they want to see results. They're not going to invest in a dream or just an idea. They want to invest in something that's already proven and that they can see clearly that if they just fuel it a little bit more with money, it'll just keep on growing and bring them returns. They care about the returns, right? Second, money does not create skills in the founder. For everybody that's just barely starting out, I've seen a lot of people that, hey, I want to become an entrepreneur, but I need to raise capital. And to be very candid, you don't. If you have a massive vision or you want to go into a highly competitive market, yeah, of course you can go to the startup way, but just getting 500K from Y Combinator or getting $2 million from your rich uncle will not make you an entrepreneur. Basic skills like marketing, selling your dream, leadership, customer skills, those things are learned while in the trenches. And there's a reason why second-time founders get uh, invested in a lot more than first-time founders, because first-time founders are extremely risky. Now, three, having investors is a massive pressure. All of this media bursts where we see companies celebrating the next round of investment, we clap at them and we recognize them a lot, but it's like getting a leash, right, for the founder. Now you have to report, heavily report, and they'll inspect everything you're doing to all of your investors. And it's a high pressure kind of thing that's bootstrapped founders do not have, right? So just, I hope that this gives you a little bit of an idea of the founding sources and a couple of simple rules to understand. And of course, because we always want to laugh a bit about it, I love this meme. When you see a startup that actually has revenue, is it possible to learn that power? Because a lot of startups, they raise capital and they're not profitable for many years, right? And then you have this meme of the guy looking at VC fundraising instead of actually focusing on building a business, which is another cliche. Again, not all startup founders are like that. There's amazing startup founders out there, but it's the typical joke. Now, how to launch a startup. We know what is a startup, we know who funds it. How do I launch one, right? And this is a small overview. Again, tell me what you want me to create videos about in the comments, and I'll help you out in the next editions. You need to understand that there is actually no unique way, but here are 6 steps to give you a rough idea on this methodology. And why do I say that there's no one unique way? Because when I was preparing for this small video for you, I spoke with a lot of my Stanford colleagues that are not bootstrapped, they're startup or VC backed. And everybody had a different story. There were a couple of guys that went like, hey, I had a pitch deck and a dream, and I spoke to 137 people, and I raised $5 million with no MVP, just a dream. And then I had people that's like, I had savings, so I put 50K in, I got to 25K monthly recurring revenue, and then I got money from an external source. So there's a lot of ways that this could happen, but this is usually the methodology that you should follow. Okay. So step number one is validate the problem. You need to talk to real people, confirm that the pain your startup will solve is real, urgent, and common. If there's no validation, there's no startup. And it's a cliche saying, but you need to fall in love with the problem. What problem are you solving in what market? And make sure that it is urgent, because if something's urgent, they're willing to pay money for it. Step number two is define your solution. Create a simple, clear product hypothesis. One sentence, no perfection, just clarity, right? So you've spotted the problem. Now you need to create a solution that actually will solve the problem as fast as it can, that there you see that there's a potential to having it developed, even if you don't have the skills to develop it, that you talk to maybe engineers or people that could develop it for you, and that they tell you, hey, we could do it, we just need money, we just need resources, right? And make sure that the solution is simple. Usually simple solutions will scale. Extremely complex solutions will never see the day of light. Okay. The light of date. Now, step number 3, build an MVP. MVP stands for minimum viable product. And this is a fast, cheap, basic version of your idea, enough to test demand, but not enough to get attached. So what you want here is the basic framework of the app. If you are a solo founder with no resources, now you can get a lovable Replit base 44 account. These are apps that allow you to do vibe coding, and you could create a very quick first version of your solution in hours or a couple of days. So make sure that you understand that you don't necessarily need a lot of money to get to this MVP phase. You just need to sit your butt down and find out a way to develop a framework where you can test if there's demand or not. Number 4, show early traction, right? So you want to collect proof. If you're going to sit in front of an investor later on, you want to say, hey, I run maybe $5,000 of ads on Facebook, and look at the reactions of how many people signed up for this or how many people paid on the pre-launch, right? Anything, signups, beta users, pre-orders, LOIs, engagement, small wins matter. Imagine that you show up to an investor saying, hey guys, I've already have letters of intent of people that want to purchase this for $100,000. I just need to develop it. How strong would that pitch look like? But that requires pre-selling your idea, which is an incredible skill to develop that not a lot of startup founders have at the beginning, but that you can get to it, right? Then step number 5, create your pitch deck. This takes a little bit of time, but a pitch deck is basically 10 slides tops, right? With 1 or 2 or 3 lines maximum per slide. Don't put a lot of content in, where you tell the story. What is the problem you're solving, the solution, the market you're aiming at, the traction that you have, the business model, the team behind it, right? And this is what you're usually going to be sending to accelerators or to your investors. It needs to tell them how much do you expect on growth, right? Because that's what they're going to be looking at. Who's the team? What's the problem? What's the solution? And how do we see potential on money coming back to us, right? Just so you get an idea, the big firms of venture capital, they'll usually have like a weekly meeting where in 1 hour they'll go through 50 or 40 pitch decks, right? So they give you like 2 or 3 minutes. That's how fast they'll discard you. So this has to be really, really well done. And then step number 6, talk to investors, right? Start with warm intros, angels, accelerators, and early stage VCs. You're not begging for money, you're offering an upside. That has to be your angle. And of course, depending on the country that you're in, the state that you're in, the money that's available is going to be very different. If you're raising capital in Mexico City, there's a bunch of good venture capital firms that could help you, but they usually will give you less money than if you're raising capital in San Francisco, right? So a lot of people, I've seen entrepreneurs that move to San Francisco because that's where a lot of the money's at for 3 months, and just go and just start knocking on doors and pitching VCs, accelerators, etc. One of the biggest things that works here is actually building a network of entrepreneurs, going to the events, getting to know people, looking for introductions. This is where the hustle happens for the startup founder, right? And if you want to know more about this, there's a great book called The Lean Startup by Eric Rice, which has been around for a long time, but I would say it's kind of like the Bible for startup entrepreneurs. You can get it in Spanish, in English, in Amazon, look for it. And I'll just leave you with this last meme. Our statistics show that only 2% of startups survive after 5 years. And the startup founder, just highly emotional and naive and beautiful, tells it, hey, so you're telling me there's a chance? Because that's actually the attitude that we all have. You have to be a little bit crazy and naive to become an entrepreneur. And I want to recap before we go. So what did we learn in this little tutorial? Number 1, we learned what a startup is, the difference with a bootstrap one, who funds a startup, how to launch a startup, and that's pretty much it. So guys, please leave me a comment down below if you enjoyed this video. If you have questions, give me your questions, and I might do a couple of other videos just to help you out with that. Again, my name is Cris Ursua. I'm a sales coach, business consultant, entrepreneur, and the founder of Mass University, online business university for entrepreneurs. We've been around for 11 years, helped 1.3 million students grow their businesses, and it'll be a pleasure to help you out. Subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you soon. Bye.